back, and we are glad to have with us. This is Teresa McDonald, and she's with Partners Land Title. So one of our title agencies in our area that one that I use quite a bit. In fact, Ellie, she did your closing with you and Mike, and we're going to see what you have to say today.
Got you. Well, thank you for having me. And I know that the topic, of course, is title. So before we started, you had mentioned you wanted to know exactly what a title company does. From the beginning to the end, we work on behalf of a mortgage banker, a realtor, an investor. We're not wholesale as far as we can't go knock on a door and say, when you sell or buy a home, choose Partners Land Title, because we actually come into the very end as somebody else chooses to use that title company. So once we get the order from the realtor or the mortgage banker, we start to open title, and it's called abstracting. So we open the title and we abstract the property. So we search the property for 42 years, and we're looking for any liens, judgments, any misindexed mortgages.
Why 42 years?
That is just the standard in Ohio. I don't know that there's a good ruling behind that, but across the board, everyone goes back 42 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a nice, even but odd number, right?
Yes, yes. So once we do the abstracting, so we have our company, just throw this out. I'm an independent title agency, so I am not owned by anybody. We have two other partners. We're all working partners. And so we have a system in place that when that order comes in, every single person in that office touches that file. So from the time of the order entry, which is input, to the abstractor, which we have in-house for most of the counties. From the abstracting, once everything's done, it then goes to title clearing. So that's your payoffs, judgments, mortgages, anything that we have to work on to clear title. Once title is clear, it then goes into the processing queue. Once it's scheduled, it then is processed and goes into the closing. And once I close, I turn it over to shipping and dispersing.
Interesting.
So every person in that office touches this file, and they all have a piece of it. I feel like we're making a product. We're putting a piece together. And at the closing table, that is my end product sitting in front of you. So, of course, it's high expectations.
Right.
I want it to look really good. I don't want mistakes. I don't want things to have to be fixed. So, from the title side, that's kind of how you build the actual commitment. And that's what we put on the table for our investors and our realtors.
And that's kind of a check and balance process then too,
Absolutely.
by having multiple people look at the file. And obviously, when there's title companies out of our area, we all hate those. You don't have any real experience with them. These are all problematic for our clients, which is why your realtor's going to recommend a title company. Sometimes the lenders recommend it. That'll get us a little pushback because, it's the lender's job not to really recommend that because they may really not know what's the title company service.
Right.
Where I know the experience because I'm there at the closing table with you. Yeah. So if they don't deliver, if there is a problem, if there's a hiccup and we don't meet the deadlines that we need to, those are all issues that can cost us the deal, right?
We all know that in this business, it's a relationship business. So, if you've been doing it long enough, and I've been doing title for 35 years, I was at two other title companies before we opened our own in 2003, you build those relationships and you get the comfort with the people that you work with. So when I'm on a Saturday and I got a showing and I have a tax proration question, who's going to answer the phone? So that way you know who you can reach out to have a good solid team around you, which honestly makes every one of us look better.
Right.
If I have a good realtor on the other end that does everything they should do, if I'm doing what I need to do, and then we get to the closing table, at the end of the day, I am your number one referral because I'm the last person at your table.
Right.
So things could fall apart right there if you don't have the right person on the other end. So it is really about relationships.
And it's not really just our relationship because I have comfort in knowing that if Ellie and Mike had a question, they're able to reach out to you.
Absolutely.
They don't have to come through me to talk to you. They can reach out to you and you're going to answer their questions. And I have total confidence that, hey, everything's taken care of.
Absolutely.
If you would call me and loop me in, then you obviously can do that as you could. But I think that goes a long way, especially what I tell clients is when you're using something that you've found offline, it's an 800 whatever situation, they're not there locally where you could go to their office if you had a problem. Those are serious things you don't want to deal with, and you want to be able to put a face with the situation so that you know that you're getting an answer.
What you're building when you're working with your clients, you're building that relationship not just for that transaction, but for your children, for somebody, a relative, that referral base that you want to be giving back to you. So it's important that you're using a local title company that you do trust. And the reason for that is because there are a lot of good title companies. I mean, I say the title companies here today locally are the best in the business. We've all weathered the storm. It's just what makes one over the other, or what relationship do we have. When you're dealing with somebody out of the area, and if you closed with them and then you go to close with me and there's a problem, the working together is not a good flow, because you're trying to correct something that someone else done. Here, we all know each other, and I think we work well with each other. You just don't burn your bridges.
Right.
If someone's done something, you reach out and you call and say, hey, this is what's happened, and they work with you to help you fix it, or you work with them. When you're out of the area, you really don't have any pull. They don't answer their phones, you leave messages, you can't get a hold of anybody. So it really is, better for the business to try to stay local with somebody that you can knock on a door.
And especially because we're talking about like the single most largest financial decision most people make in their life, and a large amount of money, right?
Absolutely.
That's either going to get wired, shared, somehow, they're getting a check or whatever. You want to make sure that there is comfort 100% from start to end. And when there isn't, that gives real concern to the clients, certainly, but to all of us that, hey, this isn't going like it's supposed to.
Right.
Why is this more complicated? What do we have to do in order to resolve this?
Right.
But I think, we've talked about all the scams and the deed fraud, and we've talked about the wiring fraud. One of the things that you did that I still think is an amazing thing, and I still have some of your cards, is that you had your title company information, the wiring instructions, and it is always helpful that when I work with a buyer, here is the information that you're going to need, because this is the title company that we're going to recommend, right? And nothing else needs, like, you're not going to get an email, you don't have to worry about it. And them having that physical card was so comforting that they didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to worry about it.
Right. And we put that in place because of the wire fraud, because everybody has emails, and even though we say right on the bottom of it, we never change our wiring instructions, call before you wire, it's important to get something else in front of somebody. The unfortunate thing is everyone feels that things are like junk mail. So we put a packet together and we mail it out to every buyer, but we only have the information that comes from the sheets. So sometimes, when they get it, they don't even open it. They just throw it to the side because they feel like it's a form of junk mail. And then when you're at the closing table, even though we have other measures in place, we're like, did you get that card? And they're like, oh, I never paid attention. You know what I'm saying? So you do try to put things in place that tries to make sure that they get all the tools they need to feel like they're not getting emails from somebody who is scamming them.
Right.
We use a third-party system. It's actually just an email, but it's called Ring Central, and it goes straight to their phone. I'm going to be honest with you. Some people think that looks like a scam. Someone's just texting them randomly saying, here's your wired information, here's who I am. But we also have a third party through that Ring Central that actually emails them, and it's a little packet. So we really do hit it in 3 different ways to try to assure people that we are who we are, and this is the information going out there.
Yeah.
One time in 20 years, I have physically had a wire that was fraud. And if you've ever sat at a closing table and experienced the emotion that's going through at the time someone realizes that their wire did not get there, you try to figure out whatever you can put into place to make people feel comfortable.
For sure.
I do a lot from my phone. If I'm working with you, if I'm talking to you at night and you're like, hey, they didn't get them, I'll text right then I'll call them and say, hey, this is my cell, I just sent it, just so they put a voice on the other end of it. Not that somebody scamming couldn't do that as well.
Right.
But if they're expecting it, it's not really a cold call. They're more relaxed and comfortable of who they're speaking to.
Right, and I think that's really the part of it is knowing that Teresa's going to reach out to you, and we're going to get this taken care of so that you don't have to worry about sending that $500,000.
Yes.
Because
It's
that is anxiety on
is.
every level.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I cannot imagine those times where it's not gone the way that it was supposed to. I would not want to be in that room.
Yeah.
that would be
I can assure
devastating.
you the wires are not just anxiety for the buyers sending in, it's anxiety for the title companies sending out. We have a 3-process in place. So one writes it up, one verifies it, one signs off. You know what I'm saying? So that way 3 people touch this before we ever release a wire. I'm going to be honest, I sit at the closing table 10 times a day. People want me to wire their money. I ask them if they brought me a voided check, and they throw in a Post-it note, a account number, and a routing number. I'm not taking it. I mean, I trust that that's your account, but I need something to verify the validity of where I'm sending the money, and I also want something to verify 2 more sets of eyes that the routing number is correct and the routing number is correct. Transposing a number
It's
is
so
very
easy.
easy.
Yeah.
So we hear all the time, and you're the first. We normally have a form. The forms don't guarantee me where I'm putting that money.
Right.
If you hold title under an LLC, I can't put that money into your individual account. It must go in your LLC. So you have to show something that verifies the validity of where that money's transferring. But it's also a comfort zone for the title company that I'm doing what I need to do to assure that your money is going into the appropriate account.
And I think that's one of the things that we're starting to see is when there's pushback from a person, well, why do I have to give this? It's to protect you. It's to make sure you
Yes.
get your money or that your money gets where it needs to be. So why would that be something you're not willing to do, right? It's like when you ask for their ID. Well, I don't need to give you my ID. Well, how do I know you're John Smith if I don't have,
Yeah.
I don't know you.
Can't
I mean,
just
you
let
could
anybody
be,
sell a house or buy, right?
right? So this is the reason why we put systems in place and ask the questions that we do. Obviously, you have to do that as well.
Yeah.
So for the consumers, the buyers that are out there, potentially sellers, potential clients, there are things that are going to be asked about that you're going to be asked to provide, and that's really to benefit not only the process, but for you.
Yeah. And it's not always convenient. I mean, but I assure you the reason why we're asking to do it is to make sure that the process is done and that wire is transferred and it's transferred into the right account. It's into your account. Most people don't have checks, so we're sitting there going, okay, now what do you do? Unfortunately, this generation don't write checks.
Right.
So now we're doing the top half of a bank statement. I don't want your transaction history. I don't want to see your account. I really just want to verify that this is in your name and it's your account number. Routing numbers, we have a template because we wire all the time to the banks.
Right.
And we also get on the phone if we don't, and we find out what the wire, the routing number is. So we do our due diligence to stay on top of that as well to make sure that, the process we have in place is protection for everybody.
Right.
So sometimes you are right. We get pushback. They're like, I don't have a bank account, or I don't have a bank statement, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. But I can't just take your word for it. I can't just put the money wherever you ask me to put it. And sometimes people that have LLCs have that pushback because they don't have an account in the LLC. They're only using their individual account. And in order for me to give them a check in the LLC, they have to have some way to cash it.
Right.
So a lot of times you get this pushback because at the end of the combativeness, which is not what you want to do, that's not what it's about, you find out that they don't have an account. So, I mean, you always hear, you're the first, no one ever asked, but unfortunately there's a reason why there is procedures in place.
Right. And so part of that business 101, yes, if you're going to buy investment property, if you're going to have a business, you're going to have an LLC. That's the first step. And then to establish a bank account, because you really shouldn't be commingling your accounts, your personal to your business. So you want to be able, for your tax accountant's benefit, make sure you have separation of those funds, and you can't put your business account, a check made out to the LLC, into your personal account. So if you're closing a property on an LLC, then it makes sense you're going to need to have some form of bank set up in order to take the funds from the sale.
Yep, and you should, but it's amazing how many people come to the table and they don't. Same thing as trust. I mean, anything in a trust account, you just got to have that to put the money into trust. You can't just put it in your individual names. So we do find ourselves a lot of times, making copy of their operating agreements or their trust papers and sending them to the bank with their stuff, with the check, so they can open an account and deposit their check.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a workaround.
Yeah.
So doing title for 35 years, is that what
Yes.
you said? It must have changed a lot with technology.
It has.
So what are some
lot.
of the biggest differences? And especially if people haven't bought a house or sold a house in 30 years.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to be honest, starting out, you would walk into offices that were full staffed offices. You would walk into a realtor's office that had 30 realtors and they were all at a desk working, unless they were out showing a property, or mortgage bankers. They were all at desks. So you could do a lot of marketing that was hands-on. You would eye to eye, shaking hands, how's things going? I make jokes about, donut dollies, bagel bunnies. I mean, you were taking in donuts and different things, but you got to see people, talk to them, and you could ask, I call it good, bad, and ugly. Like, how's it going? What's wrong? How can I fix things? Constructive criticism is the best way to learn in this business. The technology, you didn't have all the emails and the phones, and I mean, you always had phones, but nothing like you do now. Right now, my biggest thing is, in 35 years in business, as I've gotten older, so has my clientele. And now the younger generation is coming in, and it's all about technology, these podcasts. The technology, the emails, the Instagrams, the social media. And I'm not good at that. That's not what I do. I've always been the one that's been on the front line shaking hands. I do have Sydney in my office, and she's a great marketing rep as well as a closer. And she is the future of Partners Land Title when it comes to the social media. So we're learning together. I'm calling it old school, new school. Only because there's a lot of things that she's doing that I would never imagine myself even entertaining or trying to get out in front of people that way. But there are no longer staffed offices. You can't go into an office and everyone's there. Most of your loan officers are working from home. Most of the realtors are working from home. They just go into the office to maybe make copies or do whatever. But so you can't physically go in and have a visual with anybody anymore, honestly, unless you set it up. So I think it's probably just the transition from being able to be in front of people versus being behind a camera or on an email. I mean, I can talk faster than I can type. So if I need to correct something, I don't want to email you or text you. I just want to call you.
Right.
Most people don't want to answer because they're right in the middle of something and they want you to text them. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a...
Unless it's you, Teresa, I'll pick up, right? But electronic signatures is something that's really new, right?
Yes.
And even on the real estate side, it was a battle. Realtors did not want to adopt this new platform where, what do you mean we're doing electronic signatures? We want wet signatures. We want to be before the client.
Yes.
Well, that thought has long passed because they're so quick to do everything electronically and not even care about meeting. Who is the seller? Well, do I need to ask for ID? Nah, we'll just take it and then we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
So electronic signatures. Do you see the state of Ohio going to electronic notaries?
We're kind of there in a sense. I mean, you guys are using the DocuSigns or the dot loops. We as a closing agent, if it's a cash deal, we're doing everything through DocuSign and they're just wiring us. If people are out of state, we're now using the RON notaries, which is the remote online notaries. We're not quite there on closing packages yet. I don't know that we ever will be, but there are some lenders that are doing hybrid packages. So a lot of that's being done through the DocuSign. And then only the main documents that have to be notarized are being closed, at the closing table, which is moving those closings a lot faster. I know the counties are working on the e-filings, doing it through Simple File. Most counties are there. I think Montgomery County is still lacking back on the notarized, like the deeds. We can do affidavits, different things through the Simple File, but not your actual deeds and mortgages. But I know we're moving that way.
Yeah, well, Montgomery County ranks highest in deed fraud right now.
That's correct.
So I don't know that I'm for that. I am for more checks and balances, obviously.
When it comes down to the deed fraud, for many years, you never have heard of it. In the last several years, you've heard of it, but you've not seen it. In the last year, I've seen it. I can tell you firsthand that it's happening, that there are people that are just preying on, mainly like people that have passed away and inherited the property through a certificate of transfer, and maybe that loved one that inherited it didn't take care of the property. They're not cutting the grass, they're not going over there, and there are people watching these houses. They're looking at the obituaries, they're seeing what's going on, and they're watching the houses to see if there's any traffic or activity. And then if they don't see anything, they're literally doing a fraudulent deed. They do that fraudulent deed. Most of them are handwritten deeds. A lot of these deeds you can already see that this is not right. But you, as a title company, had again to put something in place to make sure that you're actually got somebody who's watching every single deed that goes to this chain of title. So not only when my abstractor sends it, if there's 20 deeds, I've got somebody sitting there looking at every deed, researching it, going through the obituaries and different things to make sure that these deeds are good deeds. You're not going to be able to catch them all. That's not going to be possible. But we did have one the other day that the people had passed away in 2017, and they just sold the property
Wow.
in 2025.
Wow.
So very interesting. Now, we caught it, we've stopped it, but the problem is that person that now has this fraudulent deed has to hire an attorney, and they have to fight for what was rightfully theirs, and it's a very costly process. So, until they put really something in place. I do know when Stacy Benson was at the county, she put the deed fraud program in place. I think she's also started asking at that point for IDs when people were just bringing written deeds or just doing it themselves. I know that we worked hand in hand with them on when we found fraudulent notaries. We shared that with the county. When they had it, they shared it with us. If we found a fraudulent deed, we sent a copy to them. So we were starting to compile names and lists of people that were doing these deeds. The only way I feel that you'll ever be able to stop it is if a deed is prepared only by a licensed attorney or a title company. And I think it should be a two-person deed. I believe a seller should be signing off and a buyer should be signing on. It makes it more where two sets of eyes have to have that, or two sets of notaries. It's just people that are just doing it themselves, having it notarized and hand carrying it down there, you'll never be able to stop it.
Well, and I think that's what John McManus had shared the one time we had him in, was that, you can just get a notary stamp off Google and whatever online, and it doesn't even have to be legit. Like, there's no verification. I don't validate that the license that you present to me is real. How would I know to do that? But we would think that the county would have a higher level of scrutiny to say, well, why does this have your name with an LLC when it's just the LLC that is on record for this? Doesn't match, and you're not on this LLC. So that would be the first question. Speaking from experience for one of my clients who had a deed fraud situation come up, still not resolved, and still through the throes of all of that. And like you said, it's the hardship on the person who didn't do anything wrong, but have had something taken away from them.
A very costly process. Once an affidavit is filed, and that's what happens normally when someone does a fraudulent deed, you file an affidavit to state that you didn't sign that deed, you didn't have it, that wasn't your, you didn't sell it. That point, you have to go through probably a quiet title action, or you have to have a court order that says that this deed is fraudulent. So you have to hire an attorney, you have to fight through it, and you got to get a judge to sign off on it. Some of these people that inherited this property, there was a reason why they didn't take care of it or couldn't take care of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they don't have that money.
I'm a little confused. Are these fraudsters getting these properties in their name and keeping them, and then that's when you find it?
No, they're selling them.
So are these people not moving in?
No.
They're not.
They're just trying to do a money grab usually. So it'll be a quick, like fake quick claim deed gets the money to this party A, and then party A takes and sells it to party B, who then may sell it to party C. And each time, maybe they're only getting a little bit, but hey, 10 grand not having to do anything, probably 10 grand worth easy, right? And then by the time it gets to C or D, part A is already forgotten about, right? But now you have D, E, or G already involved, and it's so far down the line that they keep thinking, hey, well, I'm still getting a good deal. I bought this house for 70 grand. It started out at 10, and then it went to 20. Each person got a little bit of it. By the time it gets there, nobody's caught it.
But is this
Where it stops.
7 different parties that
That's correct.
don't want to move into the house?
No, that's 7. It's all set up that the first guy does the fraudulent deed and he sells it to an investor. And he just calls and says, hey, Joe, I got this property. I'm going to go ahead and liquidate it. Don't need a title search, man. There's nothing on it. I'm going to sell it to you for $10,000. Just meet me at the county. We'll swap a check and we'll file the deed. And it happens. And then Joe says, hey, Ted, you know what? I got this property that I want to sell to you for $5,000. I got it. Didn't want to rehab it, and da-da-da. And there it goes to Ted at the county. So they're just swapping a check and a handshake.
Yeah.
They're not using a title company. And now, finally, Fred, who goes in and fixes this wonderful property up, now hires a title company to sell it. He
And
puts
he
it on the
finds out.
market and he sells it. He goes to Tammy, the realtor. He's selling it because he just fixed this up, put $50,000 into it, and now he's going to sell it. You got a buyer, and here it comes to us, and we're like, the deed's fraudulent.
Yeah.
But the original people that inherited it
Are-
live out of state, or they don't.
Most of the time,
Physically-
yep. Most of the time, they are either, they inherited it because they were the children or a relative. Some people, I don't know that they even know they probably
Right,
inherited
right.
it. But the certificate of transfer, some people get it on a transfer upon death affidavit, and they never file the TOD to put it in their name. So things are just sitting there. They're not really moving them.
And they're not a party to the fraud. They're the victim of the fraud.
Yeah.
And then it just cascades from there. And
Yeah.
I think that's the issue is when you can understand how maybe one slides through. But when you start seeing that this deed for this particular property has been now exchanged multiple times in a short time frame,
Yeah.
that to me is where, well, why isn't the county catching that there's something happening here? Because it's stressful to sell your property, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as I don't want it to be. But I'm
Yeah.
probably not going to sell my property every 6 months.
Right.
And especially for a minimal amount of money here and there. Now, there are certainly deed scams and all this other type of scams that go along that's big dollars, and
Right.
they take a whole whomp
Well, if
of
they
it.
get 30,000 here, if they make it work, and they get 30,000 here, and they did a deed fraud and someone bought it and they closed it and they moved on, they're going to do it again for hire. They're going to continue to go until they eventually get caught, which there's a couple in jail as we speak that did get caught. That was a $200,000 property, but they got away with the first one that was 30,000. They tried it again for the 200,000, but unfortunately, they tried it with the same investor. So that investor played along with them to hook them to get them caught for deed fraud.
Is that
So-
local? A
That
local
is.
case?
That is.
Wow.
I think Stacy Benson was on the news for that one because
Yeah.
that's the first one being prosecuted in Montgomery County. But unfortunately, people have to realize that they have to pay for what they do. So eventually, you're going to get caught. You may be able to flip it a few times,
Yeah.
but unless you're that one-time investor that flips it and stops,
Yeah.
which you have them.
Yeah.
Somebody who just lucked into it, did it, got $20,000 and walked away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, no matter what you do, the important thing, whether it would be me or any other title company, is you use a title company. That's what we're here for. Yes, I know it costs us a little more money, but look what it's going to cost you
If you don't.
just swap that check and you put that $50,000 in there. I mean, I have a gentleman that just swapped a check at the county, bought it, fixed it up, went to sell it, and there was $98,000 worth of state of Ohio liens from the prior owner. So, he sold it for $120-some thousand, but he had to pay $98,000, so he
really
didn't
didn't.
profit.
Yeah.
Didn't
But
make
if
anything.
you just think the people are just going to be honest with you and say, I've got all these liens out here, but I just want to sell it to you, they're not going to do that. They're going to say there's nothing there, and because you're trusting them with that swap of a check and a handshake, then you end up with anything that's against that property. Not just a fraudulent deed, but liens, judgments, there's attached to the property. So when they sell it, they don't just go away.
And I think that's really an important thing to say. It's not just to say force you to use a realtor or force you to use a title company. It's to protect you as the individual, first of all, and to make sure that your due diligence is being served by a party who's looking out for you, that has a fiduciary in this, right? And so it's not bad to sell your house by yourself or be the handyman on the projects or do any of that. But at some point, do you really cost yourself more money or aggravation, or do you save yourself? And so the DIY mentality of, well, I could do this by myself and maybe save a little bit, but it's not just to protect you from the fraud, it's to protect you from the issues that are unknown. And so since you do 10 closings a day, you know, you're doing a lot of transactions, you're seeing a lot of situations that come out, which make you more aware for the next situation that comes across where maybe you can give some guidance. Hey, Ellie, you've got a question. You're going to call her and ask her, and she's going to be like, well, yeah, I would. She sent me a message the other day. This is a little funny on my part because I just didn't read the text message. I thought she sent me a message asking me about why is this title company taking so long in doing this, and I totally saw title. She was asking me about tile on a fireplace, and
It's a tile, not title.
I went into the whole reason.
Goes.
I went into the whole reason why you use the title companies you can trust.
Right.
And she's like, no, tile. I'm like, okay.
I mean, it is important. I mean, just not only because of the liens and the judgments, but because, again, the relationships and questions. So if your title guy isn't taking too long, you can call your title company and they'll tell you why. No, I'm just I mean, you know, the thing that also is important that you have somebody who answers the phone. And the one thing I can say to you is we all have voicemail, but we don't use our voicemail. We have a live person that answers that phone, and we all answer that phone all day long. They just give us notes. If we're on the other line, we're going to call you back, but nothing goes in. You'll never be put into someone's voicemail.
That's true.
We do not want to put you in the voicemail because when you're calling in, your question's important to us. To us, you're not just a number, you're a name. You're our client, and we know what you're looking for and how you want things and how to work on the files. If you're calling in, it's because you want an answer. You don't want to go into voicemail because I have 10 closings that day, and I call you back at 8 o'clock at night. Now, I'm going to be honest, I do call you back at 8 o'clock at night.
She does.
Because I do have a lot of closings throughout the day, but throughout the day, they're also compiling messages. So before I leave, normally in the evening, my goal is to return the phone calls for everybody who's called back. I may not be able to answer all of them right there for you. I can at least find out what the question is and then research it and call you back. But I don't like leaving with any messages left undone, and neither does my staff.
Yeah.
That's very
I think
important.
that's so important because I used another title company at one point, and it was like a couple days before closing, and I didn't know how much I needed to bring
Right,
to closing.
right,
And at that time, like, that's scary for a buyer.
absolutely.
You know, am I going to get this document like a day before that says I need way more than I have?
Right.
And then
the
I
whole
have
thing is gone.
And
you
then I
know?
have to go to the bank. And when do I have time to do
Right.
that? And
Absolutely.
I'm not, if I can't write a check,
Yeah.
then I have to go to the bank.
Yeah, and I
It's-
know that every lender tries to get everything done in a timely manner, so you have all the information you need to make that happen before closing. But we are in a environment, unfortunately, that the lenders are doing everything they possibly can, and sometimes you just run down to the last minute. So it's the day before or even the morning of the closing, and it's very inconvenient. But I always say that loan officer doesn't want to make that phone call any more than that next person to say, hey, it's bottlenecked in the system a little bit. You know what I mean? We're not going to have it clear to close till tomorrow morning. You're not going to have numbers. Let's push it back. It looks bad for all of us, but we're all in this together. So we know that this is something that could happen. It's not always a norm, but you know, it goes from the underwriter. They can't control underwriting by any means.
Yeah.
You can only control what you do, getting everything to them, but you can't force them to move it any quicker.
And in that
So-
scenario, it's better to eventually get the clear to close than this isn't happening.
That would be
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we all like that, but there's times that we've all tentatively scheduled a closing because, you know, somebody mentions, like, I think we'll be good for Friday, and Fridays are very busy days, so everybody wants to get a time on the books. So, and then unfortunately, come Friday, we need to push it back later. You know, you got a 4 o'clock, and then now it's a 6 o'clock, and then unfortunately, times have come that you just have to push it till Monday. But we're all communicating and working together to get it to the table. Sometimes when you get to the table, they're aggravated. They've had a process, whether it be on the selling side or the repairs that need to be made or the communication, whatever. And they come to the table and they're very aggravated and they want to point blame at somebody. I always say I'm 100% the fault. There's no sense of even putting blame anywhere else. We're here. So I apologize, then let's get it closed. I have always been the one to tell my staff that you have no clue what happened to one person before they walk in that door. Whether they come in and they're angry, they're rude, they're disrespectful, they're bubbly or whatever, you don't know what happened. So you just go in and stay true to yourself. You do what you do, and either they'll come up to your level of happiness or it's going to be a bad closing.
Well, we've had those, unfortunately.
They don't talk, they don't speak, you just keep going. But, you know, it's just at the end of the day, it's just to get it closed, to complete the process to the best of your ability.
So, go ahead.
So over 35 years, I'm sure you've seen almost all.
A lot.
What is the craziest thing you've ever seen?
There's been a lot of crazy things, but I will be honest, I think the thing that's probably been the most memorable and that I learned from, and we have put procedures in place from that time, is when I first started. We had a closing, and the husband and wife of the seller were there, and of course the buyers and realtors, and she didn't bring her driver's license. As a notary, I need to see who you are. I have to verify that you're the one selling the home. So when she didn't have it, I was going to stop the closing until she could provide me ID. I was assured by the realtor that they've worked with her for 5 years. She is who she is. They'll vouch for her. I stepped out of the box and thought, you know what, we'll go ahead and complete it, and then you'll send me your license after closing. Jim saying we'll put it in the file and we'll be good, because I had everyone saying it. I completed the whole closing, and as I put the deed in front of her, she actually asked him, do I sign her name or mine?
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So then she questioned why she said it, and was kind of backing off and saying, I don't know why I asked that. I'm so sorry. I know how to sign it. And I'm like, we're done. We will not finish this closing until you verify. And at the end of the day, there was a fist fight between the buyers and the sellers.
Oh my gosh.
He brought his girlfriend to the closing table,
And the realtor said it was,
and that's who she's worked with the whole time.
didn't know the
And
difference.
had no idea.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, we have an affidavit, a marital status affidavit, and I want you to know it has saved a lot of closings, because you ask somebody, are you married? And they say they're not married, and you go on and maybe they are married. How do you know? So now you put the affidavit and say, just mark your marital status and sign your name. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with an investor and I'm like, are you married? He's like, nope, not married. Put the affidavit in front of him, they write her name, they mark married, and they sign. You know, I was thinking you weren't married. He's like, oh, well, I don't know where she is. I haven't seen her. You know, married is married, right? Doesn't matter if you've seen her or not. So, you know, that affidavit is in place because of that experience that I had. I mean, you go through a lot. I mean, you know, people come to closing table, and I had one not so long ago, and the realtor didn't even know he was married. And when he filled it out, he's like, I didn't know you were married. And of course, another that, you know, had no clue where she was. So, unfortunately, that will definitely cancel a closing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gotta imagine
So-
there's more stories to
There's
be
a lot
told,
of
right?
stories, yeah. You know, there was a time we used to do a lot of in-home closings, and those are a little crazy when you go to people's homes. You know, we try not to do that these days. Pandemic kind of put a halt to that for a minute, even though we did do a lot of closings outside the windows. I felt like we had hazmat suits on, you know what I mean? You know, put your documents in this FedEx thing and seal it. So we went through a lot in that pandemic, but because we were all essential,
Yeah.
we just did what we had to do. I would, you know, put them in the freezer and different things just to make sure we did our due diligence. But yeah, a lot of interesting times.
Oh, wow. And so, title searches, has that changed over the years, I'm sure?
I mean, the 42 years always been there since I've been doing titles, so the years have not changed. But I feel that, you know, there was a time the abstractors had to go down to the county. They physically had to go and look at the books.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been down to the county and looked at some of those books, it's very interesting. You run across a lot of different things back then, how the deeds were worded and things that were put on deeds. You know, a lot of abstracting now is online. We still have abstractors that go to the counties, need be. We still get physical copies of things, but a lot of times all of the searches, as much as they can do, they do a lot of it from online.
That's nice.
So sometimes there's a situation where the legal description has to be updated. Is that still in process, or has it pretty
Yes.
much been brought up to date?
No. I don't know what causes one legal to be bad. I do know that sometimes they do construction and widen the roads, and that takes a little bit of the property frontage, so that makes the beginning point bad. A lot of them, if they're older legals. But the thing is, I try to say at my closing table every time I close, that when I talk about the deed, two things. One, that this is your deed, it's going to go to the county and get filed. When it comes back and I send it to you, on the top of it, it has the county auditor and the deed transfer stamp, but on the last page, it has the engineer stamp. And that engineer stamp tells you it was a good deed and it was adequate to sell. If it's a bad deed at that moment, even though it's made it all the way up to your deed and you didn't know it was bad because nothing tells us, they stamp it, needs a new transfer, or needs a new legal before the next transfer, then that's a red star deed. It's only because, again, something's happened that's made that legal description not adequate any longer for the property. Those also are very costly. But if you didn't pay attention to your deed when you got it in the mail and looked at it, then
When you go
10
to sell,
years from
yeah.
now, when you go to sell it and your title company says, oh, you've been red starred, you need legal, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't know that. They don't send you a letter. They don't tell you that. It's all in that deed when it's stamped.
So is that something that you can do immediately when you receive that?
When we see it, we make sure that we let the realtors and the seller know that it has to have a new legal. We always get 3 quotes from 3 surveyors, so that way the seller can pick which one they want to work with. Montgomery County, you can go ahead and close on the bad legal and then re-record with the new legal when it's done. We just hold the money in escrow. Some other counties, you cannot do that. Then you do have to wait. Surveys could take 3 to 8 weeks. It just really depends on the time of year and how busy the surveyors are. And they can run anywhere from $750 to $3,000, not higher. So it can be a very costly process for your seller who wasn't expecting that when they were
Right.
putting the numbers together. And you wouldn't know it without knowing that that deed was stamped.
Right.
So then is that something that you guys negotiate, like seller and buyer, or
It's
that's
not
the
really.
responsibility of the seller?
Yeah, it's usually, because your seller is giving you a conveyable deed, right?
Yeah.
They're saying that I can sell this property, that it's legal, all the things that it needs to be, free of liens, you
Yep.
know, that you're not encumbering that property.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the due diligence for the seller's side.
I guess we could say, I don't think it's negotiable, but could it be negotiable?
Sure.
I guess if someone wants to, anything could be negotiated.
Especially if it ended up taking the additional 8 weeks in order
Right.
to get that closed, then the seller may want to compensate the buyer somehow, or, you know, something like that.
I don't want to say a survey is a survey, but it really is. So if you get 3 quotes and you go with John over here, that's only $900, but it's going to take him 6 weeks, and you can go ahead and close. That's better than going over here for $2,000. That's going to take 3 weeks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, they all have to do the same process, going through the engineer's office, getting everything signed off on. You know, some counties are easier to work with than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think is the number one thing that people out there getting ready to do something with real estate or anything like that, buy it or sell it or invest, what would you say is a good tip for them to be aware of?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, we know people want to do for sale by owners. You know, as an experience of, I close for sale by owners, I close investors, we have an investor division. You know, realtors are very important. There are so many things that this person has no clue of that comes across our desk that when we get to the closing table, they're like, well, I didn't know that. But you don't know that because you just did this on your own without the education or someone taking you to the guidance. Building a good surrounding, good team to go through this process with you is an absolute must. It is very nerve-wracking. It is a lot. If you're doing a loan, you're being asked for a lot of things. You're confused because you keep sending it or whatever. You want that communication there, but it all starts with a good realtor to get you into the right path of, you know, the house, what you're looking for. The lender tells you like what you can afford. Absolutely a must. To me, it would be like going out there and looking at that little black dress, and I'm thinking I love it, and then I can't afford it, right? So once you've had that house that you looked at that you really want, and then you get pre-qualified, then you can't afford it. That's almost hard to find something to replace that. So I mean, starting right out with the good loan officer to pre-qualify to a good realtor, and then you're going to pick the end person to be a part of that team that you feel is going to guide them through the Clearfield Marketable title.
Yeah, title company is there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
Well,
thanks for coming.
Thank you
I
for
learned
having
a
me.
ton of stuff.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on the Realty Podcast. If you enjoyed the knowledge and entertainment today, please subscribe and share with your friends. We will be embarking on a journey that bridges the gap between realtors and clients, uncovering the heart and tea of real estate.